Hey, what's up? Zach here, and today I've got the Way of Wade Ice Blood V2. Here's all the reasons you may or may not want to buy them. And a huge thanks to Way of Wade for sending me a pair of these to check out. However, this video is not sponsored. They're not seeing it before you are, and all opinions, of course, still my own. And with that being said, the Ice Blood V2 is kind of a walking contradiction. There are a lot of things in here you'd expect in more of a maximalist shoe, and there are things you'd expect in more of a minimalist shoe. So it does kind of straddle the lines of some different basketball shoe categories, and there are some things that you kind of got to watch out for before you decide to buy them or not. The price point is really good, under $100 right now, so let's see what they can do for you. Now, to me, the first thing that really stuck out in the uppers was the feeling of the knitted material around them. It is a TPU knit. However, it almost feels like denim or really strong canvas. When you put your finger on it, it is just like really strong. And if you look at it on the upper durability test, the Dremel 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, I know I'm doing that pretty early in this video. However, I put it on the drag guard at the tip. The Dremel bites right through the drag guard, but it doesn't even make an impression on that TPU knitted material. And that TPU knit does go all the way from the forefoot into the midfoot. So you do get a pretty stout lockdown around your mid and forefoot. It is a really strong material, plus it has some stitching under there. It's just that once you get into the rear foot of the shoe, that's kind of where things start to change. Because when you look at the tongue of the Ice Bloods, the padding is okay. It has some nice waffling in it. However, it is a very flimsy tongue. It is only attached here right at the forefoot of the shoe. It's not gusseted. It doesn't have any real anchors to it. And then when you get into the rear foot, you got these two lace eyelets that come up in a little bit of a flange, but then the ankle collar is swooped super low. You do get some decent padding around there. However, it just becomes a uber minimalist low top shoe in the back. So the containment from the tongue and then the lace eyelets here around the ankle is just not as good as something like the Way of Wade 10, where if you look at D'Angelo Russell, who these shoes are a tribute to, he's still using the Way of Wade 10, which has, a much superior lockdown for someone his size. So when you look at these, just remember, you might get some heel slippage out of these if you are a higher arch player, just certain people that kind of heel slip a little bit easier, just because you can't get a runner's knot in there, and because the lace eyelets and the tongue just really don't incorporate to the ankle of the shoe as well as some other Wade shoes. And so for number one on the universal rating system, containment, I'm only going to give them a 2 out of 5. Honestly, the 2 points comes from the forefoot. Like I said, the tongue just moves around a ton in the shoe, and if the tongue is moving around in the shoe, that means that you can move around in the shoe. Plus, like I said, the ankle collar just doesn't give you a ton of lockdown. Some people really love that and love to be able to move around in the shoe, almost like the Trae Young 1 and 2, except these don't have kind of that elastic around your ankle that those do. But if you like that feeling, you're gonna love these. If you want more containment, you're not. Now, getting into the midsole teardown, this is an entire bed of light foam, which I absolutely love because it's an olefin copolymer, a similar compound to what's in the Curry Flow line of shoes, or just Flow foam in general. Not exactly, but very similar. Now, the shank in these is bottom loaded. It's called that Pro Bar lock on the bottom of that. It is pretty broad. It doesn't give the most snap that a shoe can give. If you look at the jump height test, this is a single leg jump height test on these. I found that kind of isolates the shank a little bit more versus the bounce height test, which does the foam. If you look at the bounce height test, got an average of 30 centimeters on these, 29 in the heel, 31 on the forefoot, which is pretty decent. It's kind of like light strike foam. But when you look at overall jumping capabilities of these, like I said, because the lockdown is a little bit more minimalist, your ankle and your heel is gonna move and then the shoe will move. So if it was a little bit more of an intimate lockdown, I think the jump height would be a little bit better because the bounce in these is pretty decent. Now, getting into the outsole tread, this is a full length tread pattern. It's almost like these thought bubbles or like flat tube type patterns. It is a very broad and flat tread pattern. So for outdoor courts, these are probably gonna be a little bit better than on indoor courts. I found on those indoor courts, even with some rubber warming, these did not have the most grippy traction. However, when you take them on asphalt or concrete, because it does have more surface area on it, they grip outdoor courts like crazy. So I would say, more of a minimalist budget type shoe on an outdoor court, this tread is gonna be fantastic. And so looking at the speed ratio of the Ice Blood, they only come in at a 2.05. Remember, that's bounce over weight. And so for speed on the universal rating system, I'm only giving them a 2 out of 5. Because like I said, that first initial launch out of these isn't as good as some other shoes, namely the Way of Wade 10, shoe in the same family. And, you know, on an outdoor court, you'll be able to corner a lot easier because the traction is a lot better. But on an indoor hardwood court, like a carpet court, or even rubberized, that traction just does not have that get up and go that some other shoes do with cornering that have thinner tread patterns. And on the Outsole durability test, the Dremel 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, I mean, not even a millimeter of damage, almost a millimeter, but not a millimeter on a 2mm tread depth. So like I said, again, on outdoor courts, for a budget model shoe, a little more minimalist, the outsole tread as well as the uppers are gonna hold up pretty well. And so that being said, for durability on the URS, I'm giving them a 4 out of 5. Really the only thing I think that's gonna be a little bit of a point of failure for these is gonna be the tongue and just maybe how the uppers just might start crinkling, you know, over time. So I think it's more upper durability in terms of blunt force of your foot going side to side, more than abrasion that takes it down a point in these shoes for durability. And getting into the fit of the Ice Bloods, I mean, they are a pretty generous shoe. I'd say if you are a narrow, medium, or wide foot, you can just go true to size. I would say if you are very narrow, you don't want to slip out of these, probably would have to go down a half size just to lock yourself in a little more, or wear 2 pairs of socks. That might also help too, or put some grippers here around the ankle collar. I'll leave some in the description below that I like. I would say though, if you are a little bit more of a snake bitten foot, just because there isn't as much support here on the medial side, there's really no paneling here. The outsole tread doesn't go up too high. The shank is decent, but like I said, it's bottom loaded. I would say you got to throw a really razor thin orthotic in these if you want a little bit more support. Otherwise, you just might want to look elsewhere in the Way of Wade family. And so speaking of that, that brings me to comfort support on the URS. I'm going to give them a 3 out of 5 for both, because like I said, they are comfortable shoes. It's just, I think over time, once the uppers maybe start wearing, when you start moving through them a little bit more and the tongue starts moving around, that comfort might slip down. The support, like I said, the bottom loaded shank is really nice. It's just that it's bottom loaded, and because there's not a lot of support on the medial side of the uppers, that's what takes them down those points. And getting into the playability of the Ice Blood V2, you know, they do have some nice nimble snap to them off the jump shot. It's just those repeated jumping up and down, up and down, up and down. It is kind of where when you're getting that heel slippage in these, that's kind of where I think that they don't do so well. So like in the paint, trying to get rebounds, I'm not so sure these are the best model shoe. I'd say a pretty shifty point guard or wing type player that's looking for more of a minimalist setup, a little more degrees of freedom in their rear foot, will like these, especially playing outdoors. Because like I said, they do a decent job on outdoor courts, much better than on the indoor. On the URS or playability, I'm giving them a 3 out of 5 because you really have to have them on the outdoor court. You have to want all that degrees of freedom in the rear foot. You have to be someone that doesn't have an issue with heel slippage in shoes. So like I said, for that person, they're a decent pickup. Plus for the price point and the durability in the uppers and the outsole tread, like I said, they do have some use cases. It's just if you're a bigger player, want more containment or kind of want more violent containment in a shoe, I'd say get a bigger shoe, get a more containing shoe, even if you're staying in the Way of Wade family. But of course, love to know your thoughts on the Ice Blood V2, kind of what your experience has been if you've had any of these, if you're looking to pick them up, let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to see the older sibling to the Ice Blood V2, the shoe I've been mentioning in this entire video, one of my favorite shoes of all time, the Way of Wade 10. Make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you in the next one.